All right, welcome to Cloud and Clear. I'm Adam Massey, your host today, and I'm excited to welcome Matt Holzapfel to the podcast. We are going to be having a really cool and expansive conversation about Tamr, his company, his career arc and his career journey, and how together we're both working to really delight customers through a partnership with Google and with Sada. Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I want to get into Tamer and talk about, or Tamer Cloud specifically, and really talk about, what you're doing in the market, some of the big problems you're focused on solving with your customers. But just before we do that, since you're our guest today, I love to kind of get into a little bit more about you personally and your career journey, and then maybe hit a couple fun lightning round questions, about things you're focused on at the moment. But maybe we can start there. Like, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and your career journey so far.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm based in the Boston area, which is where Tamer is headquartered, and I've been at Tamer for close to 7 years now. I joined when the company was just a couple of years old, and joined in a product marketing role, and really I was just like whatever job I could get at the company, I was going to take. I was coming out of an MBA at HBS, and kind of hungry to get into a startup, and in particular one around enterprise software with a specific focus on data. Because in a previous role, I was at Dell, which is where I started my career, and there. A big part of my role was helping build out our data and analytics function within our procurement group, and within that, just spent a lot of time writing custom macros, custom scripts in order to do data cleaning, so we could run some pretty basic analytics of just like what are we buying and who are we buying it from. And I saw Tamer was solving kind of this specific problem, and so joined because I wanted to be part of the cause. I wanted to find a way to help the analysts who were spending days and nights cleaning up data for chief procurement officers and other people in the business. Wanted to find a way to help them automate that. So joined in a product marketing role, and then kind of wore a bunch of different hats, just doing kind of whatever it was needed in order to make the company successful. So sales engineering, some product management work, and even sending out cold emails and cold calling some prospects, until kind of getting to my current role now of head of corporate strategy, where I lead strategic initiatives such as our Tamr Cloud business, which we started investing in a couple of years ago, and has really become a key focus area for us as we look to drive the next level of growth.
Oh, that's awesome. I love the startup journeys because you end up wearing so many hats. I've done a few startups myself and I love it. Like, I've been in roles similarly where you're like cold calling one day, building a demo environment the next day, and like pitching to, for funding a couple days later. So that's exciting. And it's also exciting to see your growth with the company. A couple quick lightning round questions. So what book are you currently reading? Let's start there.
Yeah, so right now I'm reading Sapiens, and just being in a high growth company, it can feel like a constant sprint. So I try to read a history book every few months in order to like take a step back and get a little bit more of the macro perspective. And I think that this book has an extreme macro perspective, tracing basically the history of humankind. And so when I go to the next book, which will probably be a biography or something along those lines. I had just finished reading Bill Walsh's book, the Score Speaks for Itself, or Let the Score take care of itself. And so I needed something that was a little bit less about kind of narrowly defeating your opponent. And so yeah, digging into that now.
I've heard Sapiens is amazing. It's on my list as well. I can't remember the name of the author, but I listened to him in an interview at one point, and he does a 2 month silence, meditation every year where he doesn't speak for 2 months at a time, which was pretty crazy. So that's a great book. I got to get into that one myself. What about what's the best career advice that you've ever received?
Yeah, when I did an internship when I was an undergrad, I did it was actually a co-op. So I spent a whole semester at a Huggies factory in Paris, Texas. And my manager there gave me the advice to identify one skill that every colleague has that you admire or that they're particularly strong in, and try to learn from that. And I found that to be just super useful, because I think you can read books about people who are very successful or very productive in one specific area, but if you don't see them operate day to day, it can be hard to internalize some of those lessons. And so I really like that advice, because I feel like the way you get better and the way you kind of help your company grow is just by improving in all these small ways that a lot of your colleagues have probably already improved or are already great at.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good advice, actually. Um, and then what about like who are you like what leadership examples are you inspired by, or are there any particular leaders you look up to?
I'm a big sports fan. Grew up in South Texas, and so San Antonio Spurs were my basketball team. Still are. And so I've always been inspired by folks like Greg Popovich, who I think the way that he has a very clear kind of true north, and a focus on kind of the longer term good of the team. It's something that I find really inspiring, and I know that it's kind of become very popular with folks like Jeff Bezos as well, really emphasizing the idea of long term thinking, and so that's always resonated quite a bit with me, and just seeing how someone executes on that type of leadership in an environment like sports, where every game matters, every game counts, and so you need to bring intensity every single day, but at the same time still be able to take a step back and think, well, we might lose today, but that's okay as long as we do A, B, and C correctly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then last kind of lightning round question: are you binge watching anything right now? What are you watching at the moment?
Yeah, binge watching is tough in my house, because we have a 4 year old and a kid who's almost 2 years old, and so the TV is when it's used, it's being occupied by shows like Storybots on Netflix. But beyond that, I think the most recent show we binge watched was Barry, which
Oh,
was
love it.
really good.
I am such a Bill Hader fan, and I love that's like one of my favorite shows, and I'm dying for the next season to come out. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel you on the family thing. My kids are just a little bit older than that, but now they've gotten into YouTube and they use my account. And so whenever I like want to go back and find something I was interested in my history is completely clogged with like Minecraft videos and things of that nature. So that's probably on the horizon at some point for you as well. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I always love to like hear about, what are some of the things that inspire leaders, and, how you got into your role. It's really fascinating. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about Tamr and the problem you're solving. You shared a little bit at the beginning about the company. I'd love to get more into Tamr Cloud specifically, and just kind of like for anybody who's not familiar with Tamr and Tamr Cloud, what is it that you guys do, and like maybe walk us through what an ideal customer sort of journey looks like with you.
Yeah, so the company was started about 10 years ago out of a research project at MIT, where the fundamental thesis was that in order for data integration processes to actually work with where businesses and end users were going in terms of the analytic and data science workloads that they had, that they needed to introduce machine learning in the data integration pipeline, from integrating disparate sources to identifying where do you have two records that reference the same entity but don't have a clean join key. And so the company has really been a pioneer at using machine learning in order to automate that end-to-end pipeline for getting clean, accurate data about customers, about suppliers, about products, parts, whatever it may be. And so for us, the ideal customer in many cases is companies that have broken down the physical data silos that exist in their company, but they haven't broken down the logical data silos. And so a perfect example of this is I have a couple of instances of Salesforce. I'm getting data from Dun and Bradstreet, from Thomson Reuters, and other third-party vendors. I have data coming from SAP, and maybe I've migrated most of that data into a cloud warehouse, such as BigQuery. But I need a way of actually saying, how many customers do I have, and where is there a unique identifier that actually links together all of these different records referencing the same customer? And so, ideally, or our ideal customer, they already are starting to see some of the challenges of, well, now I have all of my data in one place, and so I could run a bunch of great analytics that cut across these data sources, but I'm still struggling with, how do I actually tie all of that together and create a coherent view of my customers, or of my suppliers. We're typically working with people within the data engineering or data management organization who, they've set up the pipelines for consuming more of this data downstream, but they're starting to hear from business users in marketing, for example, of, hey, we're sending conflicting messages to the exact same customer, or people in procurement and supply chain, saying that we're auditing two factories from the same supplier, when we really only need to audit one, for example, because they don't realize that they're related and integrated. So companies that really need that view, because they're starting to push on that analytic journey, and they've broken down those data silos. Those are ones who we find can be made very successful in using our technology.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I actually, prior to Sada, I've co-founded a data science services company. And one of the big use cases we would always do is kind of around CRM and trying to do things like churn prediction and optimization. And the customer would have this amazing vision for the outcome. But the first thing we would find is that the data was completely terrible. And, half the project was just trying to manually cleanse that data. And it was really difficult and time consuming. And so you kind of got a lot of like disillusionment within the customers, because they were like, our data is so bad. That's a whole nother project that we have to tackle before we can get into optimizing some business outcomes we're trying to achieve. And so applying ML to that process is really cool and very fascinating. Are you guys, like you mentioned the Salesforce or the CRM use case, I would imagine that's a really popular use case, because you get so much duplicate and bad data by just lots of people interacting with customer records. But do you see similar use cases like in supply chain and manufacturing as well? I would assume it's pretty broad in terms of the application of your technology.
Yeah, that's spot on. And one of the things that has been a big area of investment for us is not only introducing machine learning as part of that, just matching the internal data sources together, but also introducing external data into the process in order to one, help automate more of it, and two, for use cases like supply chain or supplier management, where without external data, you're kind of toast. We want to make it, and we are making it as easy as possible for you to get all of that data that you need about your suppliers, for example, in the destinations you need it. And so, kind of specifically, we have deep relationships with providers like Dun and Bradstreet. We're able to just integrate that data as part of that mastering pipeline. And so, as an end user, you don't need to manage a bunch of third-party services, manage a bunch of bespoke pipelines in order to ultimately just get a 360 view of your supplier. You could do all of that within Tamr Cloud, and the benefit for the customer is all of the data sitting in BigQuery or wherever they're consuming it is clean, up to date, and continuously refreshed. And so we've kind of done a painful amount of work in making the technology very horizontal and generalizable, so we could do this across different domains, and not just looking at how do I clean up Salesforce data, but pretty much any data that is related to key entities such as suppliers, customers, products, parts. Our technology is able to handle and help our customers get much richer insights from.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You mentioned BigQuery, so I'd love to maybe shift gears for a second, talk about Google Cloud. So Tamr Cloud runs on Google. Can you tell us a little bit about like what that journey was like in terms of choosing the platform and the cloud provider, and also maybe anything like you mentioned BigQuery integrations into the Google Cloud data stack?
Yeah, so Google has always been an awesome partner of ours in a lot of different ways. When the company was founded, one of our lead investors was Google Ventures, and Google Ventures has had a seat on our board throughout the life of the company, and we've maintained a really good relationship with Google as a result. We do all of our development on Google Cloud Platform first and foremost before kind of looking to extend or consider any other platform. And that's largely because our engineers are just constantly saying like they love the GCP stack and it makes them most productive. And for a company that is trying to push the envelope on innovation, having our engineers be incredibly productive and for things like the infrastructure to not get in the way of them iterating on new ideas and rolling out new features is incredibly important. And so that's why we've really leaned into this relationship with Google. And also we've just seen in the market as Google Cloud Platform has grown, there are a lot of great joint customers who have this exact problem that we've been talking about. And so with that, we've been getting closer and closer to BigQuery and building built Tamr Cloud on top of BigQuery, along with a handful of other Google Cloud native services. And the reason we made that choice, kind of beyond the ones that I described, is just scalability matters a lot with this problem. And our vision and our intention is that customers don't need to and won't need to revisit what their data mastering solution is in 5-10 years when they've grown by 100x, or at least their data volume has grown by 100x. And so we really wanted to partner in a set of technologies that could promise that. And we feel like we have that with Google Cloud.
Yeah, I mean, customers are making bets now that need to be future proof, right? Because as they build this data architecture and data foundation, the house goes on top of the foundation. So it needs to be highly scalable and a future proof solution. And I think together we have that. Well, so that was super helpful around Google Cloud. What about so where did Sada get involved with Tamr and what was that background like? And maybe share a little bit about that.
Yeah, we started working with Sada out of the recommendation of Google because as we were becoming a bigger and bigger customer, Google said you should really work with Sada in order to help navigate all of the aspects of the platform as well as many of the aspects of the partnership. And so it started out, the relationship started out rather kind of small, just focused on our own usage of Google Cloud Platform, but has really taken off over these past couple of years as Sada has rolled out more services to help us grow our business and think very strategically about how we operate in the Google Cloud environment. And so we view Sada as an extremely important partner for helping us really make the right decisions. To your point on future proofing, the decisions that we're making now are going to really stick with us for years to come, and we understand that. And so having a partner like Sada who can make sure we're doing the right things and also navigating the Google ecosystem, whether that's Google customers or Google internally, has been really important and valuable to us. And so we're looking forward to, just as Sada continues to grow and roll out new services, all the ways that we can benefit.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you guys. I mean, you're a great customer, but I think what, in my part of the world around the partnership side, having you as a member of our SaaS Alliance program, where we're really driving go-to-market together, is one of the things I'm most excited about, because from our perspective, as we help our customers, migrate to Google Cloud or do cloud transformation or build applications and outcomes, so much of it now is data centric. And so we recognize that, like, to solve our customers' problems and to give them the outcomes they're looking for, we want the complementary ecosystem around GCP. And you guys are just a phenomenal example of that, because we are able to delight customers because they're trying to build huge outcomes on the cloud. And this is one area, the area that you guys solve, that is historically, very time consuming, very difficult, and very expensive. And you guys are just like an easy button for helping them to make their data clean and useful and integrated. So Very excited about that go-to-market. Any reflections on that? How has the SaaS Alliance program been for you so far?
It's going well. Excited for it to for us to kind of ramp our usage of it even further. I think one of the things that we have a lot of appreciation for is what customers are going through as they're making these cloud journeys, because the number of services that are offered directly by Google are 100 plus. The number of SaaS applications that a customer could review are thousands. And so having a partner like Sada through the SaaS Alliance program be able to kind of match customers with the right product at the right time is something that we're already seeing work very well. We just had a call with a Sada rep last week where they picked up on a couple of things that the customer had mentioned about dirty customer data, and they said, "Oh, TAMR's exactly what you said, the easy button for cleaning up your customer data." And I think that's super beneficial to us, obviously, but I think even more so, super beneficial to customers, that they don't need to be experts on the 85 categories of data management that exist now, or that vendors want you to believe exist now. They can just be experts on what they're trying to accomplish with their data, and rely on partners to help them find the right solutions.
Yeah, I mean, if we do our job right, we want to have the most inquisitive, curious sales force that can like ask questions to surface, pain points, and then quickly identify, Tamer as a potential solution for that pain point and get you guys engaged. So that's an ongoing process, but it's one I think we're making really huge strides in. One of the things I'd love your perspective on are just some of the trends in the industry. So one of the things I've noticed is like an explosion in data centric technologies over the last couple of years. You've got, lots of different approaches to ETL. You've got data integration players. You've got customer data platforms, CDPs out there, just, cloud data warehouse technologies. There's just a lot. And one of the things I found really refreshing about your value proposition is just how simple it can be, right? Like, what you do really well. It's, make data easy to clean, highly useful, integrated. What are you seeing as some of the trends in the space in terms of that, just the number of solutions out there and how customers are solving problems?
Yeah, I think to your point on the kind of explosion of solutions, I think it's getting more and more brutal out there in many ways for customers to navigate all of this. But I think one of the trends that we are seeing, one of the things that I think gives me a lot of kind of optimism that we will be able to get to a good place in terms of what our ecosystem looks like, is that customers recognize the value of migrating their data into these common destinations, whether it's a lake or a warehouse like BigQuery. They understand and recognize that if I get a lot of my data there, then it can simplify my footprint, and simplify my architecture more generally. And so one of the things that I think we saw a lot of over the past kind of handful of years is customers were doing a lot of work with metadata management, just understanding what data do I have so that I could perform some of that migration. As the migration has advanced and more customers kind of know what's in the warehouse. Now the trends that we're seeing is more customers are investing in how can I make sure that the data coming out of these warehouses or these lakes is clean, trusted, and reliable. And so whether that's people investing in things like data observability, where they could actually run tests and continue to manage or monitor that data, or people buying third-party data from data marketplaces and bringing that into the warehouse because they understand what those gaps are that exist. I think what we're seeing is a trend towards people accepting and recognizing that the data that's been recognized is that's been migrated is a core data asset, and is their enterprise data, and needs to be treated with a kind of higher level of integrity and a concern as to is this actually worth being consumed? And so I think a lot of the applications that are being built around the warehouse and a lot of the investments, even if it's something as simple as people just transforming their data using DBT and building models around it, I think all of that's a reflection of this idea that we want the data in this warehouse or lake to be trusted and reliable downstream. And so let's start building our stack around that.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're seeing that too. And that's where I think when I think about what's next for our partnership, that's where I really want to lean in is like Sada's ability to bring, the best solution stack for customers trying to solve problems with data. Because you're right, like data is increasingly like a point of currency almost in terms of value for a company, and they need to treat it well and invest in it and make sure it's useful. So I'm excited to do that. What do you guys see as next for Tamr Cloud on the near horizon? What are your priorities for the second half of this year?
Yeah, for the second half, we're investing heavily in this data enrichment component of the platform, and just making it even easier to integrate and onboard external data into the mastering process. And so we talked about the work that we're doing with Dun and Bradstreet, and that's really reflective of our goal of being able to put data mastering on autopilot. And so we want customers to be able to hit the easy button to not only be able to clean up their data today, but just say, okay, I want my data to continuously get better. And if that means filling in missing values from third-party data or correcting things like a customer or supplier's address that is maybe wrong in my internal data, we want to make all of that as seamless and easy as possible, because we understand that the amount that a data team needs to manage today is greater than ever. The tool stack has grown, the amount of data has grown, and so there's a lot of complexity that lives in and around data management today. And we want to be a kind of source of relief and make it so that our customers can just trust that the way that they're going to get the best and cleanest data possible about the entities they care about, such as customers, is by taking advantage of all of the data that we're bringing to the table, as well as the process that we've enabled through the core foundational technology we have.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, we couldn't be more excited about the journey we're on together. Huge thank you for being an amazing customer and partner. Also, coming up in September 14th and 15th, we'll be at Sada Impact, and I know some of the Tamr team will be there. So we would love to have you guys come out and nerd out with us and learn more about Tamr, about Sada's data solutions, and how we can work together. Matt, thank you so much for your time and for being on the show, and we will see you in the field.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the partnership.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @CloudandClear and our website, sada.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.